I don't really know how to start shows.
Come on now, don't start liking me now.
So yeah, I'm funny compared to, well, you'll see later. I stand for mayhem!
I know a lot of fucking idiots that think a lot of shit is mean-spirited just because it goes against what they believe. But the relief of comedy is it takes things that aren't funny and it allows us to laugh about them for an hour.
We got a purple suit to buy and a gigantic coffin.
Why are you laughing?
Evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Why Are You Laughing? From the Vaulted Podcast Studios in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. Today, I'm pleased to introduce to you Tough Crowd with Colin Quinn. So today, much like when we did the Patrice episode, I think this is just an episode where we can kind of relax and talk about something we enjoy.
Yeah.
We just kind of shoot the shit about it. And in reality, this is actually the topic that made me think about doing this podcast, because it was the first thing I thought of when I was like, well, what's something I'm interested in that not necessarily everyone knows about? Even people that like comedy might not know about this. I think if you're super into stand-up, you at least know what Tough Crowd is. Maybe you didn't necessarily watch it as it was only on for 2 years, but I do think it was like, as much credit as shows like Howard Stern and Opie and Anthony get for kind of creating podcasts. When you think about it, Tough Crowd was really the first podcast in the way we see a lot of podcasts today, where it's comedians talking the way comedians talk about news topics and things like that, and being genuine.
Yeah, oftentimes too, like sets of podcasts will be eerily similar to the setup they had. It's true.
Very true. So yeah, if you don't know what Tough Crowd is, Colin Quinn, who again we're going to do a Colin Quinn episode at some point too, because I think he's one
Renaissance man,
one of the most underrated guys in stand-up history, quite frankly.
Yeah,
I think he's a genius, and he'd be on my Mount Rushmore, I would say. Craig probably thinks he hasn't done enough stand-up.
He's a Renaissance man. A bunch of people agree with me on that.
Yeah, a bunch of people are licking your asshole for some reason. People that hate me, I'm sure.
That never happens. Everyone hates me.
Tough Crowd originally was the Colin Quinn show on NBC. Lorne Michaels gave Colin Quinn a break. A lot of people forget Colin was the Weekend Update guy on SNL.
I know.
Like, people forget he followed Norm. Yeah. And a lot of people said he wasn't like right in that role necessarily, which I can understand, but I could also see Colin being great at that. Mm-hmm. Like, it does seem like something that was kind of... I understand why Lorne put him in that position. You know what I mean? Like, it does seem like it would fit him. He never really took off or got the notoriety the way Norm and then people after did in that spot. Like, it was kind of after Colin, Weekend, and I guess it always was. Weekend Update was the premier spot on SNL, all the way back to Chevy Chase, I guess. But for whatever reason, Colin never popped the same way.
It's because probably how Norm left.
Maybe that too, yeah. But in 2002, Lorne Michaels and the powers that be at NBC gave him the Colin Quinn show, which only lasted 3 episodes, but he was able to parlay that and kind of have something to show Comedy Central and be like, this is what we can do. And he created Tough Crowd, which is actually, the original title was supposed to be Tough Room. That's what Colin wanted to call it. And Comedy Central changed it for whatever reason. I don't know why, such a minor change. But when we were the Colin Quinn show on NBC, this is what an argument that Patrice and Colin got into. And I just threw this in here because I thought it was interesting. It kind of shows the dynamic on the show. Like, this argument would have happened on the show. Shit like this came up on Tough Crowd. But also, I think it shows like what Colin did for a lot of guys that ended up on Tough Crowd, a lot of the comedians that were involved.
It's a long, boring story. I'm too big to tell the social, but I'll give you the quick one. Ready? The quick one is, I bring these nobodies, truly, onto NBC against, by the way, which cost that show, because I had to go against certain powers that be to get these, once again, no names on this show when they wanted to go with a certain type of show. And I was like, no, these guys are hilarious. We hang out at the cellar. It's going to be great. We do 3 episodes on NBC. It was great. These guys get shit. I didn't even make that much money, but these guys got really shit money. So they expected, because, like I said, amateurs in the business, we should have got paid big money. It's live television. So they get like, what, $2,000 a show, something like that. So they're like, well, we're supposed to go. So the one with the cellar one day, they start busting my balls, especially Patrice, of course, the leader.
So yeah, they get into an argument about money. Patrice was kind of leading the charge of like, what the fuck, Colin? We're getting shafted. And Colin's saying like, this is, what do you want me to do? Like, you guys are nobodies. What they wanted Colin to do was have fucking Jerry Seinfeld on, and I think Seinfeld was on the first episode of Tough Crowd. And by the way, people forget. It's amazing that Tough Crowd didn't have more success. People forget Lorne Michaels and Jerry Seinfeld were producers on Tough Crowd, which is very weird to think about. Like, Jerry in particular does not fit his
I did not know he
MO.
was on.
Yeah.
Didn't he produce Colin's last two?
Produces a
specials?
lot of Colin shit. I think
They're like best friends now.
they're
He loves his
boys.
stuff,
They're boys, yeah. Jerry gets in like pure. There are a lot of pure stand-ups that Jerry just loves. Like he zeroes in on and becomes kind of obsessed with. Like Tom Papa's one of his guys.
Yeah, Tom Papa.
Colin Quinn. Now like Norman's one of his
Norman's
guys.
the new one, yeah.
Ryan Hamilton is one, I think. So if you fit a certain mold for whatever reason, although I don't think Colin quite does fit that.
No.
But anyways, so Patrice and him get into it, and then they keep going here. This is on O&A, by the way.
It turned into, according to all the people at the table except Patrice, it turned into an uncomfortable kind of angry thing that he was going for. So after a while, I was like, all right, fella.
Not true, though.
I go, shut up. Okay. So then Wanda speaks up for me. Wanda goes, you guys, you understand she basically pinned out, even though she wasn't a part of the show. Do you understand how him getting you no names on the show, probably how that uncomfortable was? So then you have the black man, black woman fight, which has been going on for hundreds of years, where it's like, you know, we work all day and you guys sit around and wait for us to go home, and they're like, oh, fuck you, you know. They have their own tension. They have their own tension.
So, Colin has another great line. That's really the reason I pulled this, is to laugh at Colin's great lines and Patrice's anger at all of them.
He's like one of the only people that can talk to Patrice like that. He just goes, hey, shut up.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So yeah, let's hear how this was resolved, because I thought it was pretty funny.
Finally, we set up a big, like one of those summit meetings, a big summit, me and Patrice.
And my mother.
And his mom.
Mom? She was in the room.
His mom shows up, thank God, because I was talking to somebody reasonable. And literally, she's sitting there explaining, as she's done with every well-intentioned white teacher like myself throughout his childhood. I don't know what's wrong with my son. He's just, you know, and I'm like, I know, Mrs. O'Neill. And we have this big screaming match in my office.
This is what I'm saying.
I thought he was going to throw me out the window.
Throw me out the window.
He's literally hovering over me.
Minute, by the way.
A giant bear hovering over me. I think he's going to throw me out my window.
You're like Dangerous Minds.
I just thought it was a great story, and I mean, obviously they were able to squash the beef eventually. But so that was the Colin Quinn show, and the premise of the Colin Quinn show was essentially the same as Tough Crowd.
Yeah.
The idea, if you've never seen the show, Colin Quinn's the host, and he has on 4 other comedians. It was a rotating group where the regulars were the nobodies that he was talking about: Patrice O'Neill, Jim Norton, Keith Robinson, Greg Giraldo, and Nick DiPaolo were the rotating regulars. So a given episode would have like 2 of those guys, and then
Dat Fan.
a long list. Dat Fan was one of them, but then a long list of basically every other comedian in New York.
Dom Herrera.
Julie Gold was on a lot. Dom Herrera, Mark Maron, Attell, Louis, Burr, Bob Kelly, Chappelle was on episodes. Dennis Leary, I hate
Kevin
to bring up
Hart.
his name again. Kevin Hart was on a bunch. We're
Yeah.
gonna play a Kevin Hart clip
Wanda Sykes.
later. Wanda Sykes. Every comedian at the time, like
Sarah Silverman too. didn't
Sarah
she?
Silverman.
Yep.
I think Sarah Silverman and Jerry were on the first episode with Norton and Giraldo. I think. What?
I was going to say, the thing about this show, too, is you don't find it anywhere. Like, it's like such a real conversation about politics.
Completely.
And they'll listen to each other.
Yeah.
Completely. So it was not only a real conversation, but like you would have extreme right vantage points, extreme left vantage points, very moderate opinions you don't hear. And that, I mean, just look at the cast. Like Norton is pretty moderate, I would say.
Yeah.
Keith and Patrice lean towards more. It's hard to even put them in a political box, but more like racially motivated. Like they bring up a lot of racial points and things like that. Giraldo's definitely a liberal, and DiPaolo's obviously a conservative.
A frothing conservative.
DiPaolo has a great line in the finale of Tough Crowd. He goes, well, I'd like to thank Colin for ruining my career, because now the industry can't see me as anything other than Ty Cobb without the baseball skills. So just in the regulars, you have this difference of perspectives. And rate, you have a Hispanic guy, a couple of black guys, a couple of white guys. But then in the rotating group of other guys, you had Marin and Louis and Judy Gold, who were huge liberals. You have like Attell, who doesn't give a fuck about anything.
Some nihilist.
Like you have a complete. Like it's just genuinely like now you hear a lot of talk about we need more of diversity. We need more of an open conversation.
You had it.
That's what Tough Crowd was, and they couldn't fucking handle it. No one could fucking handle it because they said mean things.
Well, I was just going to say some of the savage beatings that happened on that show.
Oh, well, we'll get to plenty of those.
Boy.
We'll get to plenty of those. But yeah, so they would basically talk about the news stories of the day.
Yeah.
And at that time, it's funny to go back and watch old episodes. So, by the way, I apologize for any sound quality issues. It's amazing. You would think our Lenny Bruce audio was clearer than the shit we have on Tough Crowd.
I know.
Every episode is on YouTube, but most in like awful, distorted,
it's like
staticky.
Somebody filming their own TV with a camera.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah, her recording on VCR or whatever. A lot of them are clear, but a lot of them are dog shit.
But in all of them, Colin is leaning on his desk like the cool teacher.
Oh yeah.
Did I say this before on the show? DeRosa has a great roast line about Colin Quinn. Colin Quinn's specials now are about like history and the Constitution. And DeRosa goes, when did Colin Quinn become the substitute teacher that wants to make learning fun?
Always.
So, and the other thing that made Tough Crowd great and unique is Colin, as you could hear in that clip, if you're not too familiar with Colin, he mumbles through everything. He can not understand him at the time. And the guests would mercilessly make fun of him. Like relentlessly make fun of him for his weak British legs or his pasty skin or his mumble mouth or a joke that bombs, whatever. They would make fun of him for it, and they would call out bombs when people bombed and everything. And it was really a completely, truly honest show. And Howard Stern gets the most credit for that, and we've learned what bullshit that is.
Yeah.
Like we learned that was all. I would say all of Howard Stern was an act, where he had writers, things were set up, calls were fake, things like that, where the wall was kind of, or the curtain was kind of peeled back on that. Opie and Anthony get a lot of credit for being a very real show. And I think they were a lot more than Stern, but then you learn like Opie and Anthony hated each
other's guts.
And never brought it up. Like it would bubble up to the surface once in a while, but very rarely did they admit the seething anger they had for each other.
Unless one of them was eating grapes or yogurt.
Yeah, right. This was always legitimate, and I think because you had that like rotating crew, it never got stale really. I think they were only on for 2 years. Yeah. But also, this was on, I should give a little more so people know. This was on after The Daily Show. This was the Colbert Report before the Colbert Report. It was in that time slot on 4 nights a week. And try and remember, folks, at least they were replaced by Stephen Colbert, the character, not what we have now.
They replaced the most honest show with the least honest show.
Yeah. So what clip is next, Matt?
This is the one Leary versus Giraldo.
Oh,
yeah. So
man.
I think this is an example. Keep in mind, Dennis Leary, big star at the time. Greg Giraldo, joke thief, as we've talked about. Or no, we haven't, as we have not talked about yet. Don't reference it.
I bet he's a joke thief.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about it someday. So Giraldo's nobody at this point. And, he kind of became the darling of Comedy Central because of Tough Crowd. But at this point, he's nobody. But this is the honesty of the show, where most other shows, if you have a celebrity or a big name on, you kind of pay respect to that guy. You keep your mouth shut if you want to call him out on something.
Kid gloves.
Exactly, kid gloves. This is, I think the other two guys, it's Lenny Clark.
Yeah.
And I think Sue Costello, if I'm not mistaken, Boston comedian.
Imagine being an unsuspecting guest on this show.
Yeah, that's true.
Boy.
That's true. And I'm surprised, like, Lenny Clark stays out of the way of this. I think he just likes a good fight. But this is Leary making a couple points and Giraldo calling him out on it.
Well, or maybe there's a non-violent way to solve the whole North Korea thing. Good thinking. They're asking for, there might be, they're asking for what?
There's a nonviolent way to solve the problem with the country that we hate that hates us has got weapons pointed at us? I don't think so.
No, you're right. Like Russia, for example, that big Russian war. There are things that there are approaches. You have to be strong about it, but there are approaches. There are economic benefits that we're giving them in order for them to stop developing their weapons. I mean, I heard recently they agreed to stop building nukes if American women agree to get their nails done at least twice a week. It's just something I read.
That's a good point. This guy writes so many jokes before the show, it's not even funny. It's unbelievable. He's got a pocket full of them.
They're good ones. I'm not saying they're not good. I'm just saying.
It was right there.
That's kind of what we do here, Dennis. We're comedy writers.
Oh, boy. I'm not coming back.
You're the guy in school that did all the homework and then asked if there was any more that needed to be done.
That's a good point. And if you would try a little comedy writing, maybe your show would still be on the air.
Pause for a second, man. So this is Geraldo.
Making me happy.
Geraldo is not pulling any punches.
No.
He's going to, and I don't even really know. This is before Rescue Me. I'm not sure what Dennis Leary's show was that got canceled. But
The Dennis Leary show.
It was right after that.
think.
Was it just called the Dennis Leary
I
show?
think it
Did he have
was.
Project Greenlight or some shit too?
He had a few things. He had a few things that maybe he's just referencing the
Also, Geraldo, don't really think about this, is a Harvard-trained attorney.
Lawyer. Yeah.
I always forget about
Everyone
Super-
forgets that. They're
super
like,
smart
how is he
guy."
so smart? He's a fucking lawyer. He went to Harvard.
Yeah, incredibly intelligent guy.
And so that's Dennis Leary's persona, kind of, where like he's a man's man and he doesn't do any work, and Geraldo's a nerd because he went to Harvard. Geraldo's a square.
Boy, did they switch it though. Leary had nothing.
Yeah, and this is again. I mean, we talk about
Bill Hicks had been dead for a while.
in a separate.
As we'll talk about in the future.
If only Bill Hicks was there instead of Lenny Clark.
Feeding them notes across the table.
Yeah. So. This
Say
is
his shit the next segment.
this is Leary, like he's crazy famous. He has no comebacks for what Geraldo's hitting him with, and so now it's kind of funny to watch Leary's reaction here.
Even my cup's half lifted up.
The sanitation guys like that show. They tell me all the time.
Yeah, she said the sanitation guys. What did they say about Dennis' show?
They love it. They said that Dennis' show should have never been taken off the air because it was the only, sign of a real guy.
Dennis' show. Did you ever have a show?
No.
Yes, he did.
Moving on.
He did have a show.
Moving
I was
on.
not trying to like the program.
See what's out there? Do you realize
For 2 years.
this is a microcosm of what war will never end right here?
Right,
If we
that
can't
wasn't
get
war.
one,
No. We're at war. We're done.
Okay.
We're done. You started it. I'll finish.
I'm telling you, but it's a microcosm. Yes, it's the only
I'm really
scientific
glad
word I
you did
know.
this section over again.
Yeah, I know.
Really
You said nothing.
I'm really.
Well, we'll cut out whatever you want. How's that?
Yeah.
Do the other one again and just
So you
have
think you
people
can
turn
just
off.
keep calling me on every joke and I'm not going to hit back a
This
little
is
bit?
really going to be a fist fight.
No, I'm not even kidding. I like the show.
I'm not
It was a joke.
kidding.
It was a good show. It was a funny show.
The bottom line is this. And the good thing is Lenny likes to break up fights too. He's good at this. You'll see.
Me, I can
If
fight.
they start fighting, it'll get ugly, The bottom line is this, folks. That's going to be
Colin trying to be magnanimous.
segment, I guess.
He literally stood in between them.
You might want to tune back and see, the little marks on people's faces, or the little hint of a scuffle that was broken up. Maybe my shirt will be ripped here.
All right. Yeah, that's pretty much it. But it's Colin trying to be a host and save the segment. We'll edit out whatever you want.
What a fucking humorless cunt.
Yeah.
Completely. Where I don't know if you guys could hear it because the audio is a little distorted and they're bleeping out curses and everything. But Leary's going, I'm really fucking pissed now. I'm really fucking.
Yeah.
And as Geraldo pointed out, like, you're just gonna take little shots at him and he's not gonna. What? He's not gonna say anything.
That's what
Like,
he said, and then he starts saying he's gonna have Colin cut
He
some
asked him to
shit out.
cut it out.
Fuck you.
Yeah, it's wild that it shows you how like a non-comedian mentality versus, and we'll get into it a little more as the show goes on. But like, there are certain guys that have literally an act. Like it is an act when they're on stage, so they don't have that personality when they're off stage, and that is very they're just not equipped to handle an environment like Tough Crowd that is brutal. And I should have said at the beginning, the premise of Tough Crowd is like I said, the way people talk and everything, but the real premise of it is the Comedy Cellar table, basically.
Yeah.
So these are the guys like Geraldo, Norton, Patrice, Keith, Rich Voss, Bobby Kelly, all these guys, Bill Burr. They would hang around the Comedy Cellar table and just brutally bust each other's balls.
Just eviscerate each other.
And that's what, and then they would get into like political discussions. And while they were having that, they would fucking roast each other and like go back and forth between being silly and being serious and being funny. And Colin said, I want to kind of capture that in the show. And that's the type of shit you get where a guy like Dennis Leary walks in and he can't fucking handle it. What's next, Matt?
Bombs.
So this is
yay.
We were mentioning this earlier. I think we only have two examples, but this would happen all the time where it's the only show, and you hear there Dennis Leary say like, "I'm gonna have Colin cut stuff out." They didn't really do that. They didn't really cut stuff out.
I was going to say, do you have the Norton?
Yes.
Okay, that's the best story ever.
I guess I'll preface it with that.
Oh, it's the worst.
So before Norton does this joke, they write a lot for the show.
They have to submit it.
So Norton wrote the joke, and Colin looks at it and goes, "Yeah, that's fine," and let him do it on the show, just for this payoff here. So let's hear that.
There's a bunch of people suing, or a couple people actually suing Grand Theft Auto, the makers of Grand Theft Auto, because a couple of teenagers reenacted what they saw in the game, went out and shot people, and now their families are suing Grand Theft Auto. And this has nothing to do with bad parenting. I mean, it could happen to any of us, because I remember when I was a teenager, I was arrested for painting my face yellow and running around yelling waka waka after playing Pac-Man.
Shh. Nobody say anything. Please, audience, please.
It got a little chuckle,
Please.
and that will look much better when it's finally
Audience,
edited.
please. Let's give him an honest appraisal. That joke stunk.
You're right, it did stink. I apologize to the audience. And to you at home, this will probably never make the air, but if it does, I'm sorry. That joke was awful. I mean, granted, I'm not smooth enough to shove food into my fat face and bang my brain at the table.
So, edit all the elements. Colin let him do that joke knowing it would bomb. Just so he could do that. Let him sit in it.
That's great.
But also, like, the cool thing, and the reason I included the end of that is that, like, Norton goes right back at him, where it's usually, like, the host would be the alpha, and Norton calls him out for shoving chips into his dumb fucking face.
I forgot about this next
This
one.
is a great
This
one.
is my favorite clip maybe in the
Dude,
show's history.
sticking with the Norton one for a second.
Yeah.
I remember on O&A, he told the story later on. He's like, so Colin, he's like, I submitted that joke. Colin looked at it, said it was fine, knowing it was going to bomb, and made me sit in it while I was there. He's like, shit like that would never fly on TV.
Any other talk show or
He's like, no, we take the bad jokes out.
And just for a point of reference, when Norton says shoving chips into his face, they did so they did a thing where, like, all of a sudden, like, they would kind of eat on the show.
Yeah.
Like, that just became an element of the show. Like, they would have, like, chips in the middle of the table or whatever.
Like nuts and stuff.
And DePaulo goes, so they've been doing some group testing, huh? And DePaulo just called him out for obviously doing something Comedy Central told him to do. And again, no show, like, they would just ignore that. They would pretend it's like, oh, this is what we do here. But DePaulo, like, calls it out the second it's introduced. So let's hear. We got another bomb here. I don't know.
Yes, we do.
I forget what this one is.
This is the bomb, Dom Herrera.
Yeah.
And then also.
Oh, yes, and then Patrice.
This genius of Patrice
reacts to it.
This is the worst.
This is the best thing ever.
I imagine Taxi and Friends are very popular in Palestine. Hey, Mom, before I strap on these bombs, can I watch Taxi one more time? You know, actually, I don't write my own stuff.
Well, if you watch, first of all, I mean, if you watch Friends, you realize that that Rachel's not really the peacemaker. Good point. Holy Christ, I never thought I could top your bomb with a word.
Come on.
I'm not going to bet. I'm going to strap one of your jokes to myself and run through
That right there, that still at the end is my favorite.
Yeah, that's great.
She's so happy with himself.
That's great.
And that's where, like, shows don't get. And there are a few guys obviously throughout time that have gotten it. Like Larry David on Seinfeld. You'll notice in a couple episodes around like season 3 or something, it got to a point where Kramer would slide in the room and get a standing ovation. Like, the crowd would go nuts, and Larry David put the kibosh on that. He's like, no, it's going to be real. Like that's not what we do here. Like, we laugh at jokes, we let jokes bomb, whatever. And Colin did that to a degree. I don't know. The only comparison would be Lucky Louie's show on HBO, where they let jokes bomb on that.
Yep.
Like, it was in front of a live studio audience, and jokes would bomb, and they wouldn't cut it out, they wouldn't reshoot it or anything.
Because guys like that understand that, like, that's just as funny as a joke hitting.
Yeah, and if you edit it out, then you don't have Patrice's line.
Exactly.
I'm going to strap one of your jokes to my chest.
And run through Palestine.
Fucking brilliant. Yeah, so that's just the realness of what this show was. That they did something no one else did, and it's amazing that didn't get more respect. I mean, if you want to talk about influences and, like, people that's influenced, it's every podcast. You know,
we are literally the biggest ripoff of this show. Very good show.
Every podcast is trying to emulate what Tough Crowd did in some respect. And I don't mean every I mean every podcast where comedians are sitting around shooting the shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? From Legion of Skanks that like doesn't cover news to shows that are more like more topical and real and like try to get into that sort of shit. So what do we got next, man?
Dat Fan.
I mean, this is a classic one. And again, the audio quality is not great. I wish it was better.
This is a classic example of people not knowing what they're walking into.
Yeah.
This is
exactly.
It's almost the opposite. It's the opposite end of the spectrum. It's the same thing as what Dennis Leary did, but it's a different end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Where Dat Fan is not famous. He just won Last Comic Standing.
Like the week before.
Yeah.
When it meant
unrightfully
something.
so. It was season 1 of Last Comic Standing.
Yeah, it was
and
when
a lot of people watched back then. And he was on with Rich Voss, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And for those of you that don't know, shame on you for not remembering Dat Fan. But it was very stereotypical Asian humor.
Yep.
Where he would get a laugh because he'd do an Asian accent and be like,
Yeah.
"This is how my mom talked. This is how my grandmother talked. Whatever." And it was a lot of that stuff. And he tries to pepper it in here. And so it's kind of like when you hear a guy on a show like start doing his act, and Voss and Patrice call him out on it. And again, Dat Fan doesn't really have a lot to come back with.
Patrice is none too pleased.
And it's not. This is where you kind of feel bad for Dat Fan because it's not his fault.
Right.
Yeah.
Like he just shouldn't have been in this spot. Ever.
Yeah.
He probably thought it was like a late night talk show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's Margaret Cho with smaller balls.
So let's hear Voss and Patrice with Dat.
I think he's just smooth by trying to move the war around. He's like, okay, we're just going to move it over to Iraq now. I mean, that doesn't do anything. I mean, it's like in Vietnam. It's like, what if they go, like, okay, the war is getting too crazy here. We're going to move it over to Cambodia.
Yeah. What now? That worked out well. What would your mother say about this?
Did you just do your hat Korean mother as Osama bin Laden? No,
Pause for a second. He's so... The brilliance of that is a couple things. It's obviously just calling him like doing his bit, but also like the route he took to get to Vietnam, like to compare Iraq to well, it's kind of like Vietnam. And it's like, is it Dat, or do you just want to do that fucking accent?
Look at that still shot.
I asked him to go. I asked him to go back a little bit because we interrupted Patrice. I just wanted to hear him yell
bring it
at
back
him.
a little.
But
it's also like him yelling is you can hear in his voice a little bit. It's where it's like this environment was brutal, but also like you can kind of hear Patrice like having fun with it.
Oh no!
Like,
hell yeah!
You know what I
Patrice
mean?
is having fun. Dat
Yeah.
Fan is not.
No.
And he's realizing, oh my fucking God, I've heard
shouldn't
about
be
this
here.
guy.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
shouldn't be on this couch right now.
Yeah.
My Korean is Vietnamese.
No, say Last Comic Standing.
No.
Shut up, Dad.
He was doing, I'll explain. We were doing Pol Pots, moving the wall. Right?
Pop as your mama from Last Comic Standing.
Can he do the rest of the show hiding behind a tree? No, that's racist. In the tunnel. That's a
great line.
Now,
That was the guy that lost. Smacking
That's
around the
Rich
guy
Ross.
that won.
That's the other thing too. So there's resentment for a guy like
Oh,
that,
yeah.
because guys like Voss, who were legitimate comedians that have been around forever, were on that show. Ralphie May finished second that year. Am I
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So like a lot of legitimate comedians were on there, and in the eyes of comedians, and I would, any audience that looked at it with scrutiny would say that Dat won because it was not like. It fit a criteria.
Family friendly.
It was family friendly.
Yep.
It was diverse, and it was palatable for an NBC audience. So they kind of wanted Dat to win, as opposed to Ralphie May, who's a loud guy talking about Native Americans and shit.
It was what you said. It's an act, not a personality.
Exactly. Yeah.
What's the best way to describe a loud guy talks about Native Americans?
It really is. He's fat and he screams about Native Americans.
A very funny description.
So yeah, like Dat Fan was the kind of guy they wanted to win a show like Last Comic Standing, and so Voss, particularly, who was on it, but other comedians too, like that didn't make it or whatever, have resentment for that type of guy.
Yeah.
It's similar to what we talked about with Dane Cook, where it's like it's not necessarily Dat's fault. Like he didn't make them let him win. He won the contest. It's not his fault. But comedians are like, well, fuck this guy because he got something they feel he doesn't deserve.
Yeah.
Well, who was complaining about this? Was it Asians or other people?
I have no idea.
The people that paid him.
Come on, he needed one. Now, go ahead. He needed one.
Here's the deal. I spent an hour and a half afterwards signing autographs, and 90% Asian students.
Yeah.
We're in line. So
don't you think ethnic? If an accent isn't comedy about heightening?
Pause it for a second.
Whatever.
You know, Colin sat them on the same couch together on purpose.
Oh yeah, this topic has to be on purpose. What are the odds? They're talking about accents when Dat Fan is on.
All accents or differences too, you know?
Yeah, I mean it's the culture that I grew up in. My family has accents.
Yeah.
You know, I mean if black comics make fun of their own culture or race,
They don't
whatever.
make fun of our culture, but go ahead.
Okay. Oh, if you see like Rich Voss, you do some Jewish jokes, right?
I do maybe one. I usually talk about my life. I talk about my Vietnamese mother a lot.
But the thing is, if Asians do it, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, this guy he's crazy. You know, like I mean, this is what we do. You know what I mean?
We're basing it on the I mean, the stereotypes are part of the. Go ahead, Phil.
I'm just saying, I read that article that complained about him. The thing that pissed me off is that they referred to him in the article as a comic. And I was really upset.
Mike, if you're gonna laugh, do it away from the mic, please.
It's 5:14 and Dat Fan got one more minute left on his fame. So I think that he should.
Why don't we just have like Vietnamese coaches? That's right in the middle, and we just like dig tunnels across the field underneath, and then we steal the playbook. Yeah? We got the book here. We have the book for you.
All right,
Black, white, here we go.
First of all, just get us something. Now listen to me. First of all,
Does he have a microchip that says do a damn goofy Vietnamese voice in 5 minutes?
You don't understand. Dat Fan in Vietnamese, that means not funny.
Please,
who's that guy?
Tom Brady.
Vietnamese Matrix for 5 minutes, please.
And then we never heard from Dat Fan again.
No.
I don't think so.
Like, legitimately,
What's he doing now?
I have no idea what Dat Fan is doing.
An impression of his mother.
Maybe on the Patreon someday we'll do a Dat Fan episode. We'll find out what he's been up to. But yeah, no, literally Dat Fan was never heard from again. And like a lot of people on that show, even in seasons after, like Amy Schumer came from Last Comic Standing, Gary Gulman, Todd Glass. A lot of people came from Last Comic Standing and did very well on there. Dat Fan won. You never heard from him again. And a lot of people will say it's because this beating he took like really exposed him as not a comic. Or to be fair, too young. He's also young here. Like he just should never have been in this position. But what's next?
You got the N-word where Colin is.
So this is an example. Oddly enough, it's amazing. Like two outspoken black men are able to give their legitimate opinion here, and yet this is why I thought this was the perfect example of why the Comedy Central and other networks since then have been terrified to do anything with this show, because it was so honest, and just think about where we are now in history and what they're talking about then. It holds up on so many levels. So many things about this show hold up because, like I said, if you take away the fact that they're talking about the Iraq War and Bush versus Kerry and shit like that, other than that, a lot of the topics hold, like they're talking about political correctness and censorship and the things that are going on today still. Government interference comes out, like just shit like that we are talking about to death today. They were doing 20 years ago. But this is Patrice and Kevin Hart on Tough Crowd.
Kevin Hart looks like 2 feet taller than he is now. I don't know what it is about the clip. Or...
Kevin Hart was on a few times, and they had in one episode, Patrice and Kevin Hart were sitting next to each other, and Norton and Lenny Clark were sitting next to each other. And Norton's also a pretty little guy. Yeah. And I forget what Colin said. And Jim Norton said, I just don't like that Colin paired us like two father-son teams. So let's hear from this discussion about someone using the N-word.
The athletic director at Philly High School, Philly, again, always had to resign because you used the word nigger in front of the school's mostly black football team. Then he used it again when he was apologizing for saying it in the first place. Then last week, black cartoonist Aaron Magruder's Boondocks comic strip featured black contestants on reality shows called Can a Nigger Get a Job?
Yeah, say it again. Say it again.
Listen, my point is this about it.
Because you're trying to read it and get away with it.
And he's saying it with passion every time he says nigger.
He don't say nigger.
He said nigger.
He said nigger.
Colin, we're not going to fall for it.
Colin says nigger on a consistent basis, man.
Listen to me. First of all, my only complaint is living in a country where there's one word that 10% of the population can sell in records, use everywhere. People want to buy the records. They can't even name the thing they want to buy.
When do you say it? When you call me on the phone, listen, Kevin, you nigger. And you whisper, you call me on the phone.
That's maybe the funniest I've ever heard Kevin Hart, by the way. So the reason that stood out to me so much is I mean, even in this room, you heard Craig clutches pearls when Colin says the N-word. But I think most people, that would be, especially like our generation, if you hear that, your takeaway would be, oh my God, a white guy said the N-word in front of two black guys. Your takeaway, and that's a reason that it would get pulled from TV now. Colin Quinn would be a pariah socially. But the reason I wanted to play the clip is that it's probably the most honest discussion I've ever heard on television. Like the fact that was on TV on Comedy Central, it was a real discussion where the two black guys in the room called out Colin, disagreed with him, and it's literally like now we're in a place where we say we want this like open dialogue. You had it.
Liars.
You had it. You had it completely, and oddly enough, in the way that you would want to frame it, where two opinionated black guys are calling him out and saying you shouldn't be saying it. You know what I mean? Like it's being called out right in front of you, and that would be looked at like, oh my God, we need to get Colin off the air. When in reality, he's the one like orchestrating the entire discussion. So I thought that was a perfect example of what Tough Crowd represented as far as like real discussion, and B, what it represented as far as like the networks being petrified of a show like that, and why, despite I've heard that Tough Crowd got like pretty decent ratings, I think.
Yeah, sure.
And it was kind of like it was right after the Daily Show, when the Daily Show started to really pick up steam. Yeah, when Jon Stewart started and everything. So it had a great time slot, and I do believe it was popular. But after 2 years, obviously, it got canceled. And I think discussions like we just heard, a large part why.
Yeah.
What's next?
Colin talking about comedic integrity.
Oh yeah, so this is
joke stealing.
This kind of goes to what we were talking about. This is from the finale, right?
Yes.
This is from the last episode.
Yep. That's the next 4 clips. I have 3, and then I have the end.
All from the finale. Yeah. So now we're at November, right after the election in 2004. They left Tough Crowd on for the election, and then made the transition and got rid of it in large part. And Colin will bring it up for reasons I was just talking about. And this is kind of him capturing, I guess, what I was just rambling about.
Finally, to the panel of regulars, the awful people that are on today, Richard Pryor was the greatest because of comedic integrity. So I'll explain to alleged comedic experts in the industry what comedic integrity is once. The ability to critique all the hypocrisies in society, yes, but also to be real enough to see that you're as guilty as everybody else in the game. Think about that. I'm not going to say it again. Now, excuse me while I go talk to what the New York Times called those mean-spirited, sometimes racist, sometimes sexist, sometimes ignorant. Sounds like every human being I've ever met who's honest with themselves. Yes, these dummies who had the balls to reveal all of their ugliness and their humanity for the sake of honesty and comedy. Let's start the show.
So again, doing something like no one would do on TV, really. The finale of Tough Crowd is Colin and the regulars sitting around just talking about why the show didn't work, why it didn't last longer. Like Colin legitimately saying, like, I thought this show was going to be on for 30 years. And they talk about different things that the industry did and didn't like about it, what worked, what they think was phony, the reasons it got canceled, and like how often do you see, if Colbert goes off the air tomorrow, do you think he's going to talk about people mocking him dancing with syringes and shit like that? Like no talk show does that ever. I can't think of another one, really. Maybe like Bill Maher would do it. Someone like that.
Yeah.
He's growing on me.
Yeah.
I've always liked Bill Maher. He's always had people on he disagrees with.
He's a pretty honest guy. Yeah, he's willing to have disagreements.
Yeah, I've always appreciated
so that would be an example, and that's another, Tough Crowd, actually, I was about to say he was probably influenced by this show. Tough Crowd was actually influenced by Politically Incorrect, Bill Maher's original show. Right. So shout out to Bill Maher for doing that. And so this is another clip from the finale, and this is this the poll question, I think?
This is why the show failed?
Yeah. So I think Colin gives them options, and I believe the answer is all of the above, where Colin pretty much nails why the show didn't work.
Let's start with some questions. I don't know where these came from. Do you think the media didn't review us most because A, we made them feel ignorant because they couldn't categorize us? B, they only like edgy comedy when it matches their ideology? Or C, we were too testosterone driven and it irked them because they got beat up in high school.
Or D, they was watching Leno and didn't know we was on.
E, because they didn't know if they could unlike you or not because they didn't understand a word you said.
So again, first of all, Colin's right. But then to be like, shut the fuck up, Colin. No, Leno was on against you. So yeah, it's just such an honest show, such one that I wanted to pay tribute to so much. Like I really now, and I've been saying this kind of the whole episode, but like you can go back and watch Tough Crowd clips, and it holds up. Like even when they're talking about current events.
This show would have benefited so much from DVR.
Oh yeah,
Oh
for
yeah.
sure, yeah.
Oh,
but again, I don't think it was about the ratings.
Yeah.
I don't think it was about ratings.
Oh, no?
I really think it was because like the networks didn't like that they would say racially charged shit a lot.
Well, yeah, Colin just said, edgy comedy that doesn't match their ideology.
Yep.
Exactly.
And that is a timeless statement right there. And the
Yeah,
think, what year
absolutely.
is this and what year we're in now?
Well, and think of every panel show, and Patrice fucking, as always, hits the nail right on the head, where he says they're going to redo this show with, 4 fucking liberals that all agree with each other, and, mildly mock each other, and you'll go, oh my God, they made fun of his shirt or something. But these guys were doing it for real, which is a lot different.
I have the one to talk about. It can't be copied.
Yeah, let's hear that.
I believe Patrice talks about that.
Do you think this show will have offshoots now? Like, are we kind of like the Africa Bambaataa of honest self-appraisal and full disclosure on TV?
I didn't hear the beginning of the question. I'm sorry.
I know, once you heard Africa Bambaataa, you were fuming.
I heard that.
You know why this show can't be done? I'm going to explain. They'll try it. They try it. They tried a couple times with crossballs and some other goofy nonsense. But because we all know each other and this is real, they're going to try to put some goofy idiots from L.A. together to go, oh, your head is big. And people are going to go, phooey. They know it's real. The people know it's real. We know each other.
And literally, I can't think of a specific example of a show that did this, but this is the type of shit Hollywood does in general, where they'll see something like Tough Crowd work but be afraid of it. So they'll literally parody it to the point where they're like, okay, we need a Patrice type. And they'll literally get a big, loud black guy, but who's saying nothing.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like he's loud, and so that almost tricks you into thinking he's opinionated and edgy, but he's not Patrice. So they get it's safer. You know what I mean? They're not as scared.
Yeah.
What else do we have, Matt?
This is the end now, the credits, the final statement from Colin.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll play that. We'll end with that. But do you guys have anything else we want to get to with Tough Crowd before we get out of here?
I have the reunion.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh shit. Yeah.
Oh, so this. By the way, so I've been to Skankfest 4 times. There have been 2 signature events at Skankfest, where one would be Louis showed up like right after the controversy. The first thing Louis did publicly was show up at Skankfest, and the crowd went nuts. The other would be the Tough Crowd reunion. And I was in the building for both, there for neither. I was in the wrong room at both times. So Louis J. Gomez went to Colin Quinn, said I want to get the Tough Crowd gang together, and they did it at Skankfest. And this is them like talking about it, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, and it's also, I think, them talking about why. So in the years since Tough Crowd, and now we're almost at 20 years since Tough Crowd started. In the years since then, everyone goes to Colin Quinn and says, why don't you do the show on HBO? HBO would have you. Why not do it now? You got Netflix. You got all these streaming services. Why not do it? So this is basically Colin's answer to that as well.
The reunion was fun though. Like the one time we did it, felt really good. Yeah, man, that was really fun to do.
It was fun. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you ever think of doing it on Netflix or?
And since
Jimmy, questions ever come up?
How many people on Twitter now just say that? I feel like they're just doing it to annoy me. Thank God. Yeah. but when people do seriously bring it up to me, like some people still do, like you got to bring that show back. It's like I'll say it one more time. You fucking idiot. I don't have the power to go to HBO. Shut your fucking mouth.
I did text Colin after and say that we should do a few live shows because that was really good and it was fun. It was a really easy time.
Why'd you choose to take that off the air?
Sam. So there's a couple things there. One, I would say, obviously Colin doesn't have the power. He didn't just take it off the air one day. I think he wanted to keep doing Tough Crowd. However, there have been a couple options where Colin could have done Tough Crowd and has chosen not to. Anthony offered him. Anthony Cumia said he could do Tough Crowd on Compound Media. My opinion of that, and Colin's obviously never said this, my opinion would be I think there's something to doing it on Comedy Central or a network, whatever. Because I think if they're not going if they're on Compound Media, it's just a show that's, saying kind of the same shit that Anthony said earlier that day. You know what I mean? On some level,
maybe a little bit less.
Yeah, maybe not quite as angry.
A little more tame.
Well, DePaulo would be saying the same shit.
Yeah, it would sound like a Colin Quinn monologue from a few minutes ago.
But my point is, on Compound Media, they're not like the edgy show. You know what I mean? Where I think there's something to doing it on Comedy Central where they're pushing back against the media that they're up against. You know what I mean?
Well, you think with Comedy Central plummeting right now, they have one show, South Park or whatever the fuck?
Yeah.
They don't even have that.
South Park and The Daily Show.
Yeah, they have South Park.
And Tosh, is Tosh still on, maybe?
No, that got canceled a while ago, didn't it?
Yeah. I think he just stopped doing it.
Or he stopped doing it? They would be stupid not to reach out to him and try to...
You mean Web Junk 3.0?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they would, but they'll never reach out to Colin because that doesn't fit. Look at what The Daily Show has become, where Jon Stewart was clearly liberal, but would talk about news stories with a comedic, like he'd make fun of everyone, and he was probably a lot harsher to Republicans and everything, but he'd make fun of everybody. Now it is just like liberal propaganda,
basically.
Left-wing
talking points now.
With no jokes, like with the jokes eliminated. Yep. They would rather, wherever we've gotten in the world, whether from Amazon Prime all the way to NBC, for whatever reason, it's more important to have like the right ideas, the right thoughts on policies than to be entertaining. Yeah. And they would rather lose money than have shows that would be successful if they're over the line, quote unquote.
Yeah.
So it's sad. We'll never. But also, like, they could have done a Tough Crowd podcast. I know Colin Quinn hates podcasts. They could have done something on YouTube. Norton's right. They could have done just like a tour where they kind of do that shit. But I think there's something about Colin, and I've noticed this with a lot of very like creative people where, well, that's done. He's just moved on to other shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I also, not to interrupt you, I think Opie and Anthony kind of picked up the ball because after the Tough Crowd era is when that show started to become...
Well, literally it started...
The table.
Tough Crowd was canceled in November of 2004.
Yeah.
O&A started in October of 2004, back on Sirius.
Back on Sirius, yeah.
So literally... Jim Norton jet skiing two coattails, as he said before, jumping from one to the other.
Yeah.
And that's, you're right, where like they kind of, they'd have all the same guys in.
Yeah, it's the same guys
for the most part. Like Geraldo and Keith weren't on as much, but they
were.
Patrice, Norton, DePaulo, Louis, Burr, obviously Colin, Bobby, Voss. Those guys would be on all the time, and it would be the same. It wasn't as news driven.
I feel like every time Geraldo was on O&A, though, he was fucked up.
I mean, I think by the end, that's.
I feel like every time
he went anywhere.
I feel like every time Geraldo was awake for a while, he was fucked up.
We'll do an episode about Geraldo at some point too,
definitely,
because that's a sad story. Like, he was one of my favorites.
He's one of the greatest ever.
Yeah. But yeah, that O&A really did pick up the ball. We'll do an O&A episode too, so we'll talk about all of this at some point. So make sure you stay with us here on Why Are You Laughing? If you want these episodes a week early, if you like what we're doing, go to patreon.com/blindmike. Get the episodes a week early. If you like what we're doing, but don't feel like subscribe, you don't want to waste your money, I understand. But support the show for free. Subscribe on iTunes, give a 5-star review, follow on Spotify, wherever you get podcasts, wherever you're listening to this right now, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like all our videos. That helps for some reason. Do whatever every other channel tells you to do with the algorithms. Just do that for us, because I think I like what we're doing here. I've enjoyed all these episodes that we've done. People seem to be enjoying it, so help out the show if you'd be so kind, and make sure you listen to Very Good Show.
If you like a nice Tough Crowd ripoff, listen to Very Good Show.
Yeah, Tough Crowd without all the jokes.
Yeah,
go listen to Very Good
people
Show.
Who are even less famous.
And of course, we record these episodes at Vaulted Podcasts here in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. So if you want to record something, whether it's a podcast, a music video, film, whatever you got going on, hit up Matt from RI on Twitter, Vaulted Podcasts, RI.com. Here in Pawtucket, if you're in the area, I recommend it. Matt does a good job helping you out. So come on down to Pawtucket, and then that's pretty much it. Buy some merch, and we'll see you guys next time on Why You Laughing.
Well, folks, that's it. Now, as you know, I'm going to say a few words. I guess it is kind of the end, but, you know, maybe it's not the end. Maybe, you know, maybe it is. Maybe I'll die peacefully in my sleep. Or maybe people will think I died peacefully in my sleep, but they won't realize Freddy Krueger killed me in one of my dreams. That far being peaceful, it was the most savage and brutal of all murders. Well, probably you'll see me as a guest on some sitcom playing a plumber who has Tourette's syndrome or something that networks find funny, and, you know, you'll try not to notice the sad resignation in my eyes. You'll probably forgive me and say, hey, the guy needs money, what's he supposed to do? And then a few months later, you'll read the paper, former TV host found dead at 29 Palms, Motel 6, or 6 Palms, Motel 29, it won't matter. You'll say, hey, wonder what the story was there, but you'll never find out because I'm not even worthy of a TV movie, let's face it. My publicist does a good job. Maybe they'll include me in those stories about the curse of SNL or something like that. Now, I'm really not going to go out like this. You understand that, right? That I'm really angry and I'm now issuing a fatwa against the media. That's an Islamic death warrant. Nobody crosses me like this and gets away with it. It was a strategic error on the part of the industry. And now, unfortunately, they're going to pay because, as they know, every reaction and action has a reaction. There's cause and effect. Do you honestly think people could treat me like this? Okay? Yeah, that's right, folks. You made a mistake this time. This time you screwed up because I don't like to be toyed with. Well, I mean, crowd left, huh? Shut up. Stupid. This is really like the end of Friends, you know? You ever see the end of Friends? It's just the room where all the friends were, and you go, wow, it's empty without Joey and his crazy, dumb remarks, without Ross and Rachel and their... I'm still not sure about their relationship. I never really understood what they were about, and I didn't really care. I really didn't watch Friends, except I watched the end episode for some reason.